Hi, and welcome to the Mom Project's Empower Hour. I'm Elizabeth Shackelford, and I am here today with Lauren Daitchman, Division Manager of Custody Client Servicing, and Nadia Cobalovic, Co-Chief Operating Officer for Hedge Fund Services at Northern Trust. Hi, Lauren and Nadia, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
We are so excited to talk to you today. We are going to dive into the discussion of how Lauren and Nadia have successfully navigated their careers at Northern Trust while also being moms. Additionally, we'll learn more about Northern Trust's approach to supporting and uplifting parents within their team and workplace. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This session is saved here on LinkedIn and on YouTube, available for rewatch at any time. And we will have time for questions at the end for Nadia and Lauren. So add any questions you may have into the comments and we'll try to get to all of them at the end. Okay, are you ready to get started?
Ready.
Okay, good. Well, before we dive into your professional journeys, we're going to do a quick round of questions to get to know you. Okay. Are you a morning person or a night owl? Lauren, we'll start with you.
I'm a night owl. I aspire to be a morning person, but I don't think I ever will be.
And Nadia, what about you?
I'm a morning person. Last time I was a night owl, I was probably 25 years old. So I'm past that. I'm definitely more of a morning person.
But I think too, at a certain point, you're like, I know where my energy, I know where I'm most creative, and that's what I got to lean into.
Yeah.
Okay, the best book you've read recently or your favorite show you've watched recently, Nadia?
I just finished Only Murders in the Building, the second season. I enjoyed it. I didn't guess correctly in either season, but I like the show.
Love it. Lauren?
Being my authentic self, I'm going to share that I really like The Summer I Turned Pretty. I know I'm probably a little too old for their target audience, but
No, both shows are on my list. I've only watched season 1 of Only Murders in the Building, and I need to get back into it.
I loved The Summer I Turned Pretty, so right there with you.
Yes, and I've also heard amazing things about that. So, okay, I'm going to add to my list. Okay, and at the Mom Project, we talk a lot about superpowers, both in your day-to-day life as mothers in the workforce and also as moms. So, Lauren, what is your superpower?
I think mine is keeping calm in the chaos. I think I'm better at it at work, but parenthood has definitely helped me excel in that space.
That's a perfect superpower. Nadia, what about you?
I would say, it's debating between resilience and candor. I think resilience for sure.
I think as moms, we have to have resilience.
Yeah.
And then what is the best thing about working at Northern Trust? Nadia?
Hands down, the people.
Lauren, what
Same
about you?
answer. I was going to say the people, the relationships, for sure.
Well, and I know we're going to get into this, but you both have been there for such a long time, which really speaks to what Northern Trust does for parents and how supported you feel at Northern Trust. Okay, well, thank you for that quick round of getting to know you. Now let's dive into your backgrounds. We would love to hear more about your career journey and how your career is developed and how you got to where you are today at Northern Trust. Lauren, let's start with you.
Okay, out of college, I started in consulting. I was doing compliance and internal audit work. I had a lot of clients across different industries, and that really helped pique my interest in financial services and ultimately make the move over to Northern Trust then. I've been here slightly over 15 years. I started in internal audit. I was there for several years, give me a great view from the top down of how our businesses work and connect together. Then I wanted to get closer to the action, so I moved over to our fund services operations several years ago now in a control function, working on risk remediation, process improvements. Ultimately made my way up through that group into a chief administrative officer role. And in that role, I supported our COO in the execution of talent strategy, process improvement, key client initiatives. So it was a great role. I got to work with a great group of talented leaders in that role, and ultimately led me to my current role, which I've been in about 18 months now. I'm a division manager over multiple client service teams for our custody, asset owner, and asset manager business.
Amazing. Nadia?
So I, in college, studied economics and political science. I had no intention of leaning into economics and moving into financial services. I had ambitions to work even in foreign relations for the U.S. government. And by dumb luck and just timing, ended up in my first job out of college being for a hedge fund. And found that I really liked it. And I felt like it was something I was good at. And again, with the people, this was almost 25 years ago, I still have people that I work with today that I started with right out of school. I just thought it was something I would stick with. And so my trajectory really was kind of built off of that random circumstance of making a decision out of school that was so different than what I thought I was doing.
Yeah.
And then from there, honestly, it was a lot of being just willing to do things that really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And oftentimes kind of being tapped to either jump into something, fix something, do something different, whatever it was. And all of that really allowed me to kind of move up and get exposed to different things throughout my career. I'd say I've become a bit more strategic or thoughtful later in my career than my maybe was early on. Early on, it was just, okay, taking on a new challenge and doing things. And I didn't realize at the time that it really built kind of the building blocks and foundation for where I am today. I came to Northern almost 13 years ago now with the acquisition of a business that I was in. And have stuck around since then. In my role currently as co-COO of our business, I'm responsible for certain aspects of our client delivery, but also for strategic planning for our business development, financial planning, kind of honestly a little bit of everything, which is kind of like being a mom. Like, just everything kind of comes out of the
like that,
at you, and you just roll with it and do what you need to do. But I really like that every day feels different. And the things that I'm working on for me, this business has become like my baby and kind of was before I had my babies. And so I feel really personally devoted to what we're doing, our success, our accomplishments, and growing it from where we are today.
Oh, I love that. And I like what you said too about, those building blocks that sometimes we know or we don't know that we're doing while we're kind of getting started in our career. And I think that's helpful advice to anyone who's still navigating those early stages. So we'll switch a little bit and talk about motherhood in the workplace. How has your perspective on your career changed after motherhood? Lauren?
Yeah, I think motherhood's put my career into perspective and helped me look at the bigger picture and, where my priorities lie, making sure my family is number one. I think my, the notion you can have it all. My personal opinion is you can't, at least all at once. I think there's phases in your life where you'll have to prioritize one thing over another. And right now I have young kids, so I want to make sure I don't look back later and realize I missed out on something. So kind of to what Nadia mentioned, just being more thoughtful in some career considerations and making sure, family is first in the decision. And that's where I prioritize those decisions. I also think as a leader, it's helped and improved my interaction with my teams. I think I'm much more empathetic and just can understand where things fit better in the bigger picture and help make that decisioning process at work a little smoother as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you just take a step back and you're like, in the grand scheme of things, this is okay. Because it's so hard. It feels like, sometimes when you're at work, you can feel all in, and then you even step away or you get a call from school and you're like, oh, shaken back into reality. So I think that's a really good way to think about things and have a, different approach. Nadia, how has your perspective on your career changed after becoming a mom?
So, it's interesting. When I was expecting, I was really worried about what things were going to look like after, and really felt like I was not going to be kind of at that same level of execution that I was used to, or that people were used to from me. And I was terrified, to be candid, of what the future might look like. But then oddly enough, I came back from leave and I was like, I don't know if everybody knows what just happened, but I can do anything right now. I literally am capable of anything that you throw at me. And so I came back honestly feeling this level of personal courage, feeling incredibly empowered. And to kind of the point too of like snapping things in perspective of what's important and what's not. It gave me just this completely new lens to view work and my career through. That I again, like kind of common theme, I was not expecting, right? I really just thought, gosh, this isn't going to work. What am I going to do? And I was really worried about letting people down, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
And, feeling like, okay, I have this whole other obligation at home that looks very different now. And how am I going to do all things? And to your point, Lauren, I don't think like you can be all things at all times ever. Right? Like that's just not feasible, but it's understanding and balancing when to go all in or partially in or mostly in on one or the other, what that looks like, and when you need to pivot and how you need to pivot, being resilient. That really, that's what really changed for me.
Yeah. And I think it's just, you watch it and when you come back, you're so scared about having to spin all these plates.
Yeah.
And then to realize that it's okay if, something, we talk a lot about glass balls or like what balls are glass and what balls are rubber. And like, you can drop the rubber balls if you need to, but there's a few balls that are glass and you just have to keep them up.
Yeah.
I think that was the best analogy I ever heard. And I was like, that's what I need to think about. Like,
I love that. I have tried as we have, employees that are going through kind of that same phase in their life of where they're expecting and whether they bring it up or not. I do try to be candid on kind of what my experience was and what I was feeling and what I was thinking. I've come to realize that if I'm thinking and feeling something, chances are maybe somebody else is. And if I can help someone and put them at ease of like, we're going to figure it all out. You're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out and we'll work through it. It'll be okay, right? It's just kind of, working through what's important, the level of importance, and how you prioritize all those things at any given moment.
And I think it's so hard too, because I think at work, sometimes we're so used to figuring out answers quickly. But I think when you come back after leave, you're like, you just have this thing of like, I'm not getting all the answers, and it's not, I'm not in control anymore.
I tell people I have twins. And when I came back and there was, something was going on, whatever it was, I don't even remember now what it was 9 years ago, right? At the time, it seemed like a huge deal. But I remember the time being like, do you know what it's like to have a baby with colic? Like 2 babies with colic at the same time? Like, we'll work through these problems. It's going to be okay.
I often felt like work was the only place I had control anymore. So, like once I had kids.
Yes. Because then you go home and you're like, everything is out of my control. But at work, I know what I can do. And I think that's too sometimes what I think is where I was so ready to go back to work. So I was like, that's what I can't control.
Yeah.
And I can't control anything that the baby's doing.
Agree.
Well, and kind of on that note, I mean, what have you learned about managing a career and managing being a mom? Do you have any personal experiences or challenges like colic that you faced while navigating this? Nadia, we'll start with you.
I am going to say this with the caveat that I realize how fortunate I am to be in the position that I'm in and to have resources that maybe not everyone has at their disposal. That being said, I think one big thing for me is understanding what I need to do, me personally, what I can do, and where I can leverage help, and that's okay. And whether that's caretaking for my kids, whether that's, I don't need to go to the grocery store, I can order delivery. All of kind of those things. I had someone, actually when I was expecting, they gave me a piece of advice and said, you're used to kind of doing all these other things, these ancillary things. And if you take a step back and think about what you can outsource, even if it's kind of the short period of outsourcing or longer, depending on, what your circumstances are, or what works for you, think about what you need to do what is important for kind of you to control and be part of, and maybe what isn't, and give up those things that aren't. And that was huge for me. I was very much used to being the doer in all of the things. And I realize now that with my kids, like if I had kind of approached it in the same way of, I always have to be the one doing it, always has to be me. I think it would have been far more challenging than it needed to be, and that it was. Not that it wasn't without challenges, but I really have to say that I couldn't have done it without this network that I was able to build and facilitate to help, honestly.
Yeah. Having a network is so important, and making that list of like what things. I remember someone told me that too, like make a list of, because we all have like these running lists in our mind of all these things to do, whether it's at work or at home, and it's kind of gets overwhelming. And so she's like, write it all down and then scratch off what you don't need to be doing. Because I think we feel pressure to get everything done, but you'd have to take, I have to tell myself to do that a lot. So, I mean, it's coming as me personally, but it's hard.
And sometimes that means outsourcing to your partner or spouse as well.
That's
that for me, right?
Yes.
I think inherently as women, we carry a load and think about things that maybe others in your household aren't thinking about, for better or worse. And it's just kind of the way it is. But I have had times where it's been like, okay, wait, stop, to your point of looking at that list. This is really something that I don't need to be doing. And asking for that help. And I will say, again, I'm fortunate of having that level of support. So yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing for me.
I love that. Lauren, how about you?
I would agree wholeheartedly with everything Nadia just said. I think early on, I remember I was at some forum and the guidance from the parents was outsource everything you can. And I had never thought of it. And I don't know, I don't think my mom's listening, but at that time, my daughter needed potty training. It was like, great idea. I'm going to ask my mom to potty train her. So simple things, not outsourcing too far, but mom, please help. So again, I'm also very fortunate. My husband carries a lot of the load. My parents help out a lot, friends and family. So very, very fortunate to have resources as well. But I think similar, outsource for sure. I think every day is a new day to try again is what I try to remind myself.
Yes.
I tell my kids a lot. I'm trying to do my best, and some days I'm not going to get there, and hopefully they're learning from that too. So trying to balance each day, trying to reset. I think balance isn't going to come on most given days. It's over a broader period of time. So if I look back over the course of the week, hopefully the week was in balance, and those days I was at work late, make up for it on another day where I'm home more. So trying to be cognizant of that and give my best each day.
I like that. Each day is a new day, and trying to reset, because some days I run the day and sometimes the day runs me. And I think you just have to go to bed at night and be like, well, I'll try again tomorrow. We had another Empower Hour, and someone said this amazing Jim Quick quote. Well, I'm quoting it right, but it's like, on the days I gave 40% and that's all I had to give, like that was 100%. And I really thought about that, because I'm like, it's okay if it's every day is not like full throttle. It's impossible to do that. And we as moms, and we just can't maintain that level of like perfection that I think we hold ourselves to, which is the whole thing. The whole concept of it is like, but I hear what you're saying, and being able to outsource and make sure that, we have support that we need.
Yeah. Well, I think Lauren, on that point too, around, talking to your kids about it and admitting sometimes where you're not perfect. I'm sure that everyone gets this. Well, like, do you have to go to work? And for me, especially, it was after COVID, because all of a sudden I was home all the time, right? And then all of a sudden I wasn't going to be home all the time. And I try to convey to my kids too, so they understand why I work, not just for personal reasons of where I built a career before they existed, and that's really important to me. But also, like, I contribute, and I contribute something really important to our households. And I think it's really critical for our kids to understand that personal need that we have, but also the impact that we have on their lives and on our family. And I really try to be transparent with them about it. And I think that's where like mom guilt starts coming into play too. And ultimately, at the end of the day, not that I, want them to feel any guilt, but I want them to have a sense of understanding where they look back and get that this isn't just all about me, right? It's about us too, at the end of the day.
Yeah. And about our family.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important. I have younger kids, so my daughter doesn't quite grasp the concept of work, but she has started to say, I have a lot of work to do today. So I say that a lot. Well, and I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about Northern Trust and, how Northern Trust fosters this amazing culture of support for parents. And reflecting on your journey, what resources or support have you found the most helpful while being at Northern Trust? Lauren?
Yeah, kick us off. I think there's a lot of resources, a lot of great resources. When I was a new mom with my first daughter, I think the biggest, most impactful resource was on-site childcare in our building. It personally helped. One, happy to have her in the building with me, but then two, I built this network of other working moms at Northern, built that community, and we're still like friends today. Our kids are still friends today. It gives me that community to reach out to when I was struggling with something at work or with the kids, and just the community aspect of it was crucial kind of in those early days of being a new mom. Northern has a ton of other benefits beyond that. There's great parental leave for moms and dads. There's discounts on childcare and nanny services. There's backup care benefits when you need just ad hoc childcare. It's the long list of opportunities or resources that Northern offers on that front.
That's amazing.
I think for me, I think we've, there's that saying, what is it? It's work like you don't have kids and have kids like you don't work. I've never really felt that to be the case at Northern, where I feel like we've really normalized the fact that people have lives and have children and have families outside of the workplace. And we talk about it, right? And I think that it's critical, again, for others to see and understand, especially as they're starting families, that it's okay. Sometimes, maybe you need to run and catch the train because there's a game, or you need to relieve your nanny or whatever. Like this week, I'm working from home. My husband's traveling, and honestly, the logistics of getting my kids to school and what have you, and getting myself anywhere at a normal time was just more than I could mentally handle. And I think the fact that like we talk about that openly, and it's never been for me about pretending I'm anything other than what I am, whether it's in the office or at home. And not being embarrassed about the fact that some of these other things that we kind of need to do outside of the office are important has really helped. And I think that really starts kind of from the top down in terms of normalizing that work and life collide at times, and that it's okay. It's okay to pick and choose and kind of figure out what works and how it works. And we need to support each other to be successful in both avenues.
Yeah, we coexist. We're whole people. Work and life have to balance, and we have to create that balance however we see fit. And I love that Northern Trust really supports that and cultivates that within either all parents or even if you're not a parent, you could still be a caregiver and you
For sure.
time. Yeah. Well, and on that note, I'm gonna skip a little bit in the agenda, but can you talk to us about your return to Northern Trust after your leave? And kind of how that was for you?
Well, I already talked about that. I was like, I am a superhero. I don't know if I
Yeah, I'm a superhero. So what can I do for you? I'm back.
It was, I did have to give myself some grace with easing in a way, although it was hard for me to ignore my tendency to kind of just dive right in. So again, being lucky and having resources, we had a night nanny. She saved my life. It was incredible. Tiana, wherever you are, you still have a special place in my heart. And we had her a month after I returned to work, and we had her while I was on leave, and then a month after I returned to work. And I remember that month I was already traveling again, walking into my kid's room, and Janet was there, and I was already traveling, and so I had to kind of figure out like what was too much and what did I feel like I needed to do. Like I really felt like I needed to go on that trip. Maybe I just felt like I had to get out of Dodge for a little bit. I don't know, but I felt like I needed to do that.
Yeah.
But I also had enough flexibility at times to say like, okay, I need to go home now, or I need to kind of delegate. And I think that was another big part for me too, of coming back and like again that like load that I feel like even at work I had to figure out how to best use the resources that were available to me, including my own team. And delegation wasn't necessarily my strong suit at times. But again, like understanding and looking at it and saying, like, what do I need to do myself and what can I maybe delay, defer, or move to somewhere else where it might be more appropriate and it'll still get done. But yeah, I mean, it was just like, I felt like at the end of the day, when I look back now, I really just needed to give myself some grace.
And I think that's such wonderful advice, especially for people returning back from, after your leave, is just give yourself some grace. But it's really hard to do that in the moment. And I think hindsight's 2020, and you're like a year out and you're like, wow, I was so hard on myself.
Yeah.
I think because, for me, I think it was hard too, because I wanted to perform and show that I was still there. And
everything's okay. Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
I'm great. I'm great. I promise.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
But that's, again, where I feel like I have an obligation to my team or business, anyone that's kind of may or may not be experiencing something like that, to talk about it and be vocal about it, because they think that it's really easy to think that something's wrong with you, or you're not doing enough, or you're not carrying your weight, or whatever it is. And I think that, again, like, it kind of needs to come from the top down, where it's okay. Like, we have lived this, all of us have, in one way or another. So I try to be vocal, to just kind of, again, because hindsight is 2020. And in the moment, I'm sure I didn't give myself as much grace as I should have.
And how lucky for, your team to have someone there to be like, just tapping you on the shoulder, being like, it's okay. Like, we've all been there. We know it. We're guiding you. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Lauren, how about you? Talk to us about
I'm trying to think back. It feels like a lifetime ago. I do remember, similar, I wanted to come back, prove myself, make sure, not that my absence was noted, but make sure my value was felt still. And so I think, trying to protect boundaries. I wasn't good at that at first. I kind of just threw myself completely back in. But then when you're battling exhaustion from trying to take care of a baby at the same time, I'm sure my output wasn't the best at times. Give yourself grace. I think ease back into it. It's not like I wasn't missed, but life went on without me. So if it takes me a little bit of time to get back up to speed again, it's going to be okay. And I think, just on the, not exactly the question, but on the flip side, so Northern has parental leave for men now too. And I know there seems to be this, I don't want to take the 10 weeks away. I don't want to go do it. And I'm of the stance that they should go take it. It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity to have that time away. The work will be here when you get back. We'll figure out how to keep moving on. But it's not going to impact you in a negative way.
Yeah. And I think the more we advocate for it and talk about it and normalize men taking their full parental leave, and I even think about, I couldn't do any, he needed to be here to help me.
Yeah.
I was like, I need help. Can you come help me?
Yeah.
So I agree. We have to normalize it. Okay. And then, so this time of year, we've, January felt like truly the longest month ever. So I'm really happy at first, but, we've kind of been talking about New Year's resolutions, or, our word of the year. And, in this new year, balancing our active, professional and personal goals. What are some of your goals for 2024? Nadia, we'll start with you.
So I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but I have tried to adopt some more positive kind of behaviors or thought processes even over the last couple of years. And I think that COVID and the pandemic have snapped things into focus for me in some ways, of investing in my personal health and well-being. I was never a workout person. I started doing that and I really love it. And so it's become a habit, and I want to continue that habit. Negative self-talk, kind of sitting back and thinking to myself, actually I'm really lucky and fortunate, and lead in reminding myself of a lot of those things at times, especially when, things can get tougher, or you're overwhelmed and there's a lot that's going on. And so I have really tried to adopt the thought around leading with gratitude. And I have to nudge myself and remind myself at times, because I'm not perfect. And the fact that I have to think about it means that it's a thing. But, and even with New Year's resolutions, right, there's a whole thing, you start it and then it needs to become a habit, right? And so for me, it's I've created some of these habits, And I think they're good and they're positive, and I'd like to keep that going.
I love it. I also have to nudge myself with gratitude. Like, remember, you get to do something. It's not you get to do this. That's what I tell myself.
Yeah.
So
I just saw this this quote from Margot Robbie around the whole Barbie nomination thing. And what she said was, well, it's really hard to be sad when I have so much to be grateful for. And so like, I think it's just like sometimes, putting things in perspective of there is a lot. And so like for me, and I saved it because I think it's just a nice reminder. There's always plenty to complain about or look down on yourself about or whatever it is. And I like to just remind myself of the good things.
Lauren, what about you? What's your goal for 2024?
I'm also not a New Year's resolution person, so I'll lead with that too.
I'm not either. It's like more like these are just some things I try to do.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's a setup to fail if you're like, you are that in on it. I think like having young kids, my focus has been really inward on the family for several years. And one of my goals, I guess, would be just to get back out there a little bit more. So I've recently taken on a new role with our Girl Scout service unit as the treasurer, trying to just do more in the community versus just in my household and at work, I think. And then just like Nadia said, some personal things like say sorry less, say no more. I say sorry all the time. I'm lucky enough to work with my whole peer set. We're all women, and we all say sorry way too much. Everybody leads with sorry, and there's no reason to apologize all the time. So.
I read Kelly Ripa's biography or autobiography, and she said that one thing she learned coming out of therapy was to say, no, that doesn't work for me. That's it. like, no, you have to kind of qualify things all the time. Like, no, because, right?
Yeah.
And it really resonated with me. I'm like, it's simple. You're protecting yourself. And at the end of the day, like it's helpful for you and for everyone else around you kind of sometimes to just say no.
Yeah.
Well, and then the first time you hear someone say that, like, oh no, I can't, period. You're like, how did you do that so well?
Let me write that down.
Or because I'm like, I can't because you like quantify it.
Yeah, you feel the need to rationalize it, justify it.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to.
So maybe that'll be our New Year's resolution together.
Yeah. Yes, it's just
that. It's a start.
Repeat it, Nadia. Just repeat it one more time so I can write it down.
No, that doesn't work for me.
No, that doesn't work for me. I'm literally writing it down.
It goes to Kelly Ripa.
I love it. And that was in Kelly Ripa's biography.
Yeah. I needed a good beach read.
No, I love it. Well, and I see, in the chat, I think we have a lot of people talking about balance. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you kind of figure out what works for you, kind of navigate balance and feeling guilty? Like, talk to us about kind of how you've maintained a semblance of balance. I don't think balance is ever, you're not able to ever execute it completely, but kind of what are your thoughts on it and how do you manage that?
Lauren, I think you started off by saying like balance maybe doesn't exist at all times in all areas. I'm paraphrasing there a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think until I came to that realization, it was harder than it needed to be. And I try to remind myself at times, like what does balance mean for me? And am I okay with the things that are going on at work and where I'm spending my time and how I'm spending my time and how much time I'm spending and what that looks like and the travel I choose to take and, all that. And the counter of that, and I think one of the more important things is am I okay with what I'm doing at home and how much time I'm spending at home? And that's where, again, to me, it's just kind of like normalizing that it's okay has been really incredibly important. I recently was on a trip to New York. My kids were on the baseball playoff game. The game time got moved up. I ended up sending my boss to a client meeting so I could get on an earlier flight and make it in time for their game. And no one blinked an eye at that. Like, that was fine. But that decision was mine to make. And again, I don't want to ignore the fact that I'm very fortunate to be able to make those decisions and not have it negatively impact me. But there would have been times where I would have said, you know what, I'm going to have to miss it and I'm going to have to explain to the kids why. I don't think there's there's never anything perfect. Like it kind of just is always, responding to how those aspects or those parameters of your life are changing and what's most important for you in the moment. I think unless, for me at least, unless I approach things that way, I feel like I'll always be beating myself up about having whatever imbalance might look like, right? And so I think I needed to respond in the moment and kind of pivot and change, and again, be okay with explaining to my family where maybe they're disappointed that I couldn't be there, but why it was important for me to make a different decision, and vice versa.
Yeah, what you said about go ahead, Lauren. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's like you learn and you change over time. Like as a new mom, probably nothing was in balance. I think I've gotten better at it over time and better at accepting, like Nadia was saying, certain days are going to be really out of balance, and saying no and not feeling guilty about saying no to either side. I'm also I'm trying to be better at being more present at whatever I'm in. So when I'm at work, really dive in, focus on work, be as productive as possible, get what I need done, so that when I go home, I'm fully there and I'm not on my phone checking emails, sending messages. Again, this is stuff that over time it gets better, and then you have really bad days from time to time too. It's not perfect by any means.
You stay up late to check those emails, right?
Yeah. And then I'm tired in the morning and grouchy.
I wish there were a secret formula, or like the secret sauce. I don't think there is. And I think it's different for each person at different stages in their life too.
Yes. Because when you were both talking about change, and I think change is the only constant, and our jobs change and our roles change, and then our kids change. So sometimes if you have little babies, they need different attention than what an older kid might need. So I think I feel at the Mom Project, and I'm sure you feel this too at Northern Trust, but I work with a wide range of moms who have different different ages of kids, and it's been so helpful to see their perspective and to hear them talking about it and know that what I'm going through is not going to be it forever.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we have a ton of questions for the Q&A, so we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll bring some up. Thank you all for your questions. Okay, Amanda asks, how do you support your team in achieving their balance, which might look different? That's a great question.
I think a lot of it's being a role model, like Nadia mentioned earlier, being acknowledging I have to leave early because I have to go to this practice, or my kid's sick, I'm going to take the rest of the day off. So acknowledging that, and then, hoping they see that and know they can, respond the same way when those situations happen. And just I constantly remind a lot of my teams, set boundaries. You have to set them yourself. I can give you guidance on what to do, but I'm telling you, log off, go home, take care of it. And if you don't do that, there's not much else I can do.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I think also, I'm not a mind reader, nor have I met anyone who is. And I think that being inquisitive, asking questions, but also raising your hand if something is going on in your life is critical. So I don't try to pretend to know all the answers or what achieving balance means for any individual, because again, it could be different based on different circumstances and what have you. But I feel like I'm just naturally inquisitive. And so if someone comes to me, my natural reaction is going to be, well, what's going on? What can I do to help? What is all this? Or, what does that look like? But I can't minimize how important it is for us to encourage an environment that fosters ability for people to raise their hands and speak up if they're missing something or they need something from a support perspective or whatever that is.
I'm asking this, and it's not a question, but it kind of came into my mind. Do you have any advice for someone advocating? If they don't have those resources, how can they best advocate for themselves, to be able to say, I need to raise my hand?
Well, I would say my experiences within our organization would be, in any organization, I think, is just keep looking and keep asking, whether it's in your immediate reporting line, whether it's human resources, whether it's someone else that's senior and has the ability to make decisions and help. I think just keep pushing and keep asking the question and kind of forcing the conversation. Again, like not everyone is as lucky as we may have been with having supportive managers and having kind of that environment that's been created at Northern that helps encourage and foster balance and talking about family and that's all normal. But I do think like if you're not getting it here, maybe you got to go over here, right over here, whatever it might look like, and using any of those resources that are available to you. And again, to me, that comes back to like, if you're thinking something, if you're feeling something, if you're struggling with something, you're probably not the only person.
Yeah.
Nadia, that's great advice. Thank you for letting me ask that question. Because, I think so many women and young in their careers, like don't know what to do. They feel like this is, okay, well, maybe this is just how it is. And I just have to but I think that's really important, is to know that if you're thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it, and you should feel confident and empowered to find the right resource.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Bree asks, what are the common themes you hear around return to work burnout?
I get a lot around the added commute time that's added to kind of a work day and how to manage that. That's a lot of what I hear, and it's just kind of balancing out again with the time I'm spending at home. My personal experience, COVID for me gave me the opportunity to be present at home, where I previously was traveling probably 50% of my time. I never thought I'd have the ability to eat dinner with my family, like on a consistent basis. Never, ever. Walk my kids to school when we were working. Like never did I think that would exist. And so a lot of the things that I get, or the questions that I get, are around like, well, now I have all this added time to my day, and it's detracting from some of those things that I got used to doing. And it's tough. I mean, like I'm living the same thing, right? My commute's about an hour and 20 door to door each way. That adds a lot of time to my day. I've had to make the decision of like what's important to me. And again, the workout thing, right? I get up at 5 a.m. Like that's the only way I'm going to get it done. And I've just accepted that's what I need to do. For me, I do find value in being in the office and being present, not just because it gets me out of the house and out of sweatpants, but human interaction, I think it's so critical, honestly. Like it's just initially when you asked what has kept us at Northern and kind of what's important, and for me, it's hands down the people. I don't think I would have built those relationships or would have those relationships, those close relationships with people, had we only engaged virtually. I don't think that would exist. So there's certainly some downside to returning to the office and what that looks like and what have you. But I think there's also some benefit. Although now that I'm reading the question, it's return to work and not just return to the office, but I'm in such a return to office mode.
I think this is also like a good.
Maybe all wrapped up in the same.
Okay, that's how I read it too.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's how I read it too.
No, I'm rereading it. Hold on. I jumped in too fast.
Yeah.
Return to work burnout, though, like we talked all about the grace and trying to find balance, whatever that might be.
Yes.
I think for me, like outsourcing was huge in not necessarily completely avoiding return to work burnout, but avoiding some of it where it was avoidable.
And I think it's just embracing that it's like all hard. It's like, it's just, you're never going to be like, I don't know. And I'm not saying, I always hated when you'd like go scroll Instagram right when you had your newborn baby and they're like, it's so hard. Cause it's like this most amazing experience. But I think, when you're going into this new normal, navigating that is not the easiest. And so it's just understanding that it's just going to take a second to figure that out.
Anything new is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think about any like big experience you've had in your life. Starting college, that was tough. It was new. It took time to adjust. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world. First job, right? Whatever it was. Like all of those experiences are hard, and they're in different ways. And you have to give it a little bit of time to make it a little bit easier. Not easy, but easier.
Yeah, and I think when you go back, it's going to look different than it did before, and it's going to take time to adjust, and kids change all the time too. So you get used to sleeping and they won't sleep again, and then you have to figure it out. I think even when you come
anymore. Like, can you just stand a block away, please?
Yeah. No more hand holding or any of that.
No.
Yeah, it all changes so quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, Marlene says, Nadia, what age do you think you started to talk with your kids regarding the impact you being a working mom has on your household or, their actual lives? I have a 4-year-old boy.
Mine were probably 5 or 6 years old once we started having those conversations. It wasn't strategic in my mind of like, oh, now they can understand. It was a matter of our circumstances in that I started traveling again. I started commuting again. Questions about why I work or why I need to work or why I needed to go wherever I was going. I wasn't really getting those when I was working from home all the time. And so it could have just been that I got lucky and that like they were at that age where they could understand it. And it's not like they're like, oh, okay, I get it. And, we never talk about it again. It certainly comes up. But I do think I was fortunate in that like it just so happened when we were changing in that next phase of life, they were at this age where I think they were able to grasp the why a little bit more better than they would have if they were younger.
Lauren, do you have any? I don't know. I forget how old you said your kids were. So
yeah, mine, they're 3 and 7. So I think my older one semi understands, and she went to work with me for a bit there when she was younger, and I'd take her to daycare. So she at least, I think, vaguely understood the concept that I was leaving the house to do something else. I don't think my younger one understands it at all yet. I have conversations about what me going to work enables them to do. Talk about like we couldn't go on these nice vacations if I didn't go to work too, or just the downside of what I didn't like if I didn't go to work. So I think their kids are always smarter and more intuitive than you think. So I think a 4-year-old probably understands to some extent.
yeah, I think so too. But I think it's funny because my daughter doesn't really remember me ever going to work. She just sees me at home. And so I think that concept is also really hard for her to grasp because she keeps being like, I want to stay home with you. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
you can't, you gotta go because I gotta work. But I think that's the hard thing to grasp too. So much of our
my
world is
3-year-old just this morning was like, are you working from home today? I was like, yeah. She's like, I want to stay with you. You cannot. So yeah, she doesn't understand.
We did this video series a couple of years ago for a virtual event where it was right when we shifted to like working from home and what have you. And we had people ask their kids or their parents or whoever was around them to describe what the person's job was. And it was gold. Like it was just the most incredible thing ever. It's like we got like, oh, my dad's job is to shop online, or it was just like it was the most random hysterical stuff. So I encourage people, if you need a good laugh, to ask those questions of those you love that are around you at times of like, what do you think my job is? What do you think I do?
You work on a computer.
Yeah, your job is to work on a computer. What are you doing?
I think I talk all day long on the phone.
That was
you talk on the phone a lot.
Yeah,
lots of meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually love this. I think it'd be such a fun like team building activity. You say one way pocket. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for the Q&A portion. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing your story, and also more importantly, like highlighting how amazing Northern Trust is for parents. We're going to drop the About page into the comment section so you can kind of read more about Northern Trust and the opportunities. Nadia and Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. I think your stories really resonated with our community because I can see people chiming in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.